Adrian had always loved the park near his neighborhood. By day it was full of joggers, children laughing on the swings, and old men feeding pigeons. But at night the park was different. The laughter faded, the air grew damp, and the trees seemed to whisper secrets carried on the cold wind. One autumn evening, after a long and exhausting day at work, Adrian decided to take a late walk through the park to clear his head. The moon was bright, casting long shadows over the empty benches and paths. The lamps glowed a sickly yellow, buzzing faintly, and the wind stirred the fallen leaves like restless spirits. He had walked the park many times, but that night something felt off. The usual path seemed longer, winding in ways he didn't remember. The swings creaked, though there was no breeze strong enough to move them, and the air smelled faintly of soil, freshly dug soil. As he passed the playground, he noticed something strange. Footprints in the sand near the slide, small, childlike footprints. But they didn't trail off. They simply stopped at the base of the slide, as if the child had vanished into thin air. Adrian shivered and turned away quickly, telling himself it was just his imagination. The path led him to the heart of the park, where an old fountain stood. It hadn't worked in years, yet tonight water trickled faintly from its cracked stone mouth. Curious, Adrian approached, but froze when he saw the reflection in the water. It wasn't his. The face staring back was pale, gaunt, with hollow eyes that blinked too slowly. He stumbled back, nearly tripping over a bench. When he looked again, only his own reflection remained. Breathing heavily, Adrian decided it was time to leave. He turned back the way he came, but the path was gone. Instead of the familiar gravel trail, he now faced rows of trees, dense and black, stretching endlessly. He tried the other direction, only to find more trees. The park had shifted, trapping him inside. Panic surged in his chest. He pulled out his phone, but there was no signal, no light from the screen. Dead. Completely useless. The lamps above him flickered, then slowly dimmed until only the moon lit his way. That's when he heard it. A soft giggle, high-pitched, childlike, echoing from the trees. Adrian spun around, searching, but the park was empty. The sound grew louder, closer, until it was right behind him. He turned and saw nothing, just shadows stretching across the grass. He started to run, branches snapping under his feet. The giggling followed, weaving through the trees, joined by whispers that called his name. Adrian. Adrian. The voices were everywhere, impossible to pinpoint. Finally, breathless, he stumbled into a clearing. At the center stood a massive oak tree, gnarled and ancient. Its bark was split wide, almost like a doorway. From inside the crack came a faint glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. Against every instinct screaming at him to run, Adrian stepped closer. The glow revealed something carved into the tree's surface. Names. Dozens of names, etched deep into the wood, some fresh, others nearly worn away by time. His eyes scanned the list until he froze. At the very bottom, in letters that looked freshly cut, was his own name, Adrian Blake. The ground shifted beneath him, the soil soft and loose, as though it were swallowing him whole. The whispers grew deafening, overlapping until they became a roar. The tree's crack widened, and within it, Adrian saw pale hands pressing outward, clawing at the bark. Terrified, he stumbled backward, but the earth gave way. His legs sank into the ground up to his knees. The giggling returned, shrill and mocking, as the pale hands reached out of the tree, grasping for him. With one last desperate effort, Adrian yanked himself free and sprinted into the forest. He didn't know where he was going, only away. The trees blurred around him until suddenly, impossibly, he burst out onto the familiar park path. The lamps were steady again, the swings silent, the fountain dry. Everything looked normal. Heart racing, Adrian didn't stop running until he was back at his apartment. He slammed the door shut, locked it, and sank against the wall, trying to convince himself it had all been a nightmare. But when he glanced down at his hand, his blood froze. Carved into his palm, deep enough to sting, was the outline of the oak tree, and beneath it, his name. From that night on, Adrian never set foot in the park again. But some nights, when the wind howled through the trees outside his window, he swore he could hear the faint sound of children giggling, and sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he saw the oak tree waiting for him, its bark splitting wider, hungry for his return.